Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. English, lovely to see you. Just opening up the gates a couple of minutes early so that we can get started bang on time. Got a very big group today, well over 100 people booked in for this, but a lot of people in different time zones. I think about a third of people watch this on catch up, like a low rent version of Netflix. Yeah, we've got people from all over attending today, all different countries. Good presence from Epsom. Good afternoon, Gail. Good to see everyone. I'm going to get going bang on time as usual, to be respectful of everyone's time, and I will not make the basic error of not sharing my screen as I did beforehand. So hopefully we've got everyone now seeing my screen. Okay, we're on the hour, and I'd just like to welcome you to the 12th of the latest webinar series that we've been doing. About quite a way through this one, we shifted to 30 minutes now that we were hopefully fully back at work post-pandemic, to be a little bit more realistic about people's time scales. Right, so this is me. For those who don't know me, I'm the owner of Visual Displays. Back in the day, we used to be known as Paradigm. I'm a specialist consultant. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. I'm currently chairing leading AVIXA's standards group standard steering committee. That current 3-year term actually is going to end this month, so I get a little bit of my life back. Been heavily involved in writing standards, including the standards that I mentioned here. I'm still working on a new standard, a very exciting new standard, which is the user experience design for audiovisual. That will be there too. A particular background to this is that my work has been very much involved with hybrid spaces, and particularly Teams rooms, of course, which is why, excuse me, a number of you here today. I'm not an AV consultant. I'm a specialist consultant, as you can see, as per. I won't read those things out to you there, but we run that as a separate thing. There is separate skill sets, and also that was building up. So we separated that out sort of second half of last year, and there's my contact details at that company. If anyone wants to contact me there, but any of the usual contact ways will get to me. So today's webinar is that we're going to be looking at aspect ratios, and just to kind of walk us through the story of that, we're going to have a little look at certain aspects of the AVIXA's DISCAS standard, because getting the size right is still absolutely imperative before anything else is considered. Then we're going to have a look at the 16:9 or 16:10 debate. That's really current at the moment, and it seems to be bubbling up more and more, particularly on higher education, particularly on campus. Have a look at that. And then, of course, the main event at the moment for most people are these new widescreen formats. Microsoft have really thrown a rock in the puddle with introducing this new front row layout. And we're going to take quite a detailed look at that and sort of the background decisions as well as there. And then we're going to look at that in sort of the context of practical issues and so forth. the credits on Netflix at the end of a movie, I'm going to zoom through these slides really quite quickly. But of course, you will get a recording to this afterwards and a copy of the slide deck. Please do put anything in the Q&A as we go through. Okay, I've got something about my audio, so I'm just going to double check on that. And I will make a change if that's okay, because I wasn't anticipating that. So forgive me while I just make a change on that. Thanks for that feedback, by the way. See, I am waking up and awake. Okay, so hopefully that is better. I've switched over to another mic. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A there. So thank you for that heads up there. Hopefully that will make things better. Thank you, Ehab. Thanks very much. So hopefully I can make a move on now and even be understood. Okay, so Discuss. Discuss, the real thing to bear in mind is that image size is defined by height. The aspect ratios, the image widths vary, but the image height remains the constant that we work with. Discuss is one of the many standards that Avixa produces. If you don't know the Avixa quality standards, then obviously I'm a big evangelist for those. In the Discuss standard, we'll look at various aspects of it because it doesn't just apply to image size. But they use viewing categories because it's all about use case and about the different kinds of uses that are put to. We've got two that we use in general, but only one counts in this case, and that's the so-called basic decision-making category, and that accounts for 99+% of all Pro AV installations. And the headlines about that is that the viewers are supposed to be able to engage with content and read properly and to be able to make decisions, important decisions, based on engaging with that. And of course, that applies to higher education as well. It's based on the element, which is a character and a font height, and we'll look at that in a moment. And we use this element font height as an entity that's relative to the height of the overall height of the image. Now, we use this element height, a percentage element height in the standard, but really just to break that down and to make it simple, what it is, it refers to the height of a lowercase character. What you can see here is that in typography, that's known as the X height, the height of the lowercase character. But we use the word element rather than font because it allows to apply to formulae and special characters, etc. Now, one thing that is not observed very often with Discuss, even though it is highly recommended, and I always try and do it with my clients and get our resellers to and integrators and consultants to do it with their clients, is that there's a text height exercise, which is it's a very simple thing. It's a PowerPoint executable that just a few slides that run, and you cycle through these in order to determine what kind of type size, font size, where people can read that at the whole of the room, and that there are a few slides there, and you can download that from my website. And also there'll be a link to that because, Ibrahim, I will be sharing this presentation afterwards with links to that as well. Now, as I say, although it's a really good idea to go through that exercise, and it's not just about making the right decision, it's actually about getting the clients or the users to buy into that. And that's very much kind of one of the UX principles, where you engage with the users, which is something that is usually quite foreign for integrators to do. But that's a bit of a sidebar, and I won't run off down on that now. Where it's not possible, there's no time, or real life gets in the way, then it's widely accepted that we use 3% element height as a kind of a starting point. And actually what that does is it equates to the old 468 rule in the old CCTS teachings before Discuss came in. And basically what that says, 6:1 rule, is that the farthest viewer should be no farther than 6 times the image height. Or to put it another way, if the image height is, say, 2 meters, if the image height, if the farthest viewer is 12 meters, then the image height needs to be at least 2 meters high. One thing about Discuss that people for some reason get wrong is that what Discuss doing is setting the minimum image height, not the image height. And within practical constraints, camera positions and so forth, ceiling height, the larger the better. Okay, well, hopefully that's a useful background as we start then now to drill down into aspect ratios. So let's start with looking at the 16:9, 16:10 dialogue. Okay, so now using 16:10 can seem quite tempting, because Discuss is all about image height and so on. And then for any given image size in diagonal inches, the image height in a 16:10 image is 8.1% higher than 16:9. However, most computer content is actually 16:9. And so how do these screens work if content will be both 16:9 and 16:10, which is pretty much the case, I would say, in pretty much 100% of all cases. Okay, looking at that in a bit more detail, what we see is that on a 16:9 display, 16:10 images will display at full height, but on a 16:10 screen, 16:9 images have a reduced image height. And if we look at the numbers in detail there, so taking an example of a 100-inch screen, you're basically losing 10% of the image height if you're showing 16:9 images on a 16:10 screen. So really that unless the content that you're showing is 100% 16:10, then I argue very strongly that 16:9 is the go-to choice. So the other thing, of course, is that 16:10 is effectively a heritage aspect ratio. So 16:10 is driven by the fact that there are projector resolutions now current of WUXGA, namely 1920 by 1200, 16 by 10. However, this is inevitably being replaced by UHD, known as 4K, but UHD 4K, which is 3840 by 2160, which is 16 by 9. So that is the reason for that. So I hope that's helpful, thinking about how 16:9 relates to 16:10. Still a really current issue, as I say. Right. So now we kind of cut to the chase effectively, because the real present tense interest in the wider aspect ratios has been driven by Microsoft and the new front row screen layout, which first showed up sort of early last year. Jimmy Vaughan and another guy at Microsoft put out this really great document, and that image on the left there is taken from that with various visualizations. And as I say, that appeared in February, March last year, but was really made official really when they launched their Hive video, which we'll talk about in a moment. So what you see there is that both the theoretical visualization on the left and the practical iterations or the installations that Microsoft did in Seattle were using 32:9. So the theory looks pretty wonderful, but if you look at the image there on the right, there's some very nice design principles there, but I'm going to focus on the image there because that there's a lot to unpack from that image on the right. However, what we're looking at here, as far as this conversation is concerned, is that you've got two low-cost ultra short throw projectors. I think that those two are Epsons. There's a hard edge blend, which is to say you've got two images, mechanically aligned to be hard up against each other. Pretty difficult to engineer, and honestly pretty disappointing quality, because that really it's not the fault of the projectors, because the projectors have been used beyond the point at which they're really designed. And this is something that really got put right later on, as you'll see. But also, looking at that whole issue of 32:9, loops us back to DISCAS. And DISCAS doesn't just address the viewing distances and image size and so forth. It also addresses both horizontal and vertical viewing angles. Now, what we say, the task group for DISCAS was a group that I led, and we used a combination of empirical, practical work, and also referenced the academic documents. For this part here, this was based on an academic survey, and what we determined was that a viewer on the far right of the screen shouldn't have to be more than 60 degrees off axis to the left-hand end, and vice versa. And hopefully this graphic that's from my DISCAS presentation there will make that a little bit more clear. And if you can see those arrows that I've drawn, so basically the problem with this, with when the screen is this wide, is that the people at the far end of each end of the viewing layout have really very acute and actually quite a long distance to see the content on that far side. So then, when that was still out there, my design team had a look at some other options. We had a look at some other options, and what we thought, well, to deliver this kind of thing properly, was that it would be somewhere around 28 to 9 aspect ratio, because what we looked at was to do what we do in other high quality installations, which was to use two professional grade projectors with ultra short throw lenses, and to use a soft edge blend, which is, say, you've got the images overlapping, and you can handle that. Some of the projectors have inbuilt soft edge blending facilities. We tend to use external boxes or PCs, but that's for control issues for us. And that delivers somewhere around a 28 to 9 aspect ratio. Now, that's pretty difficult to engineer. It's not straightforward. Obviously, and when you know how to do something, it's straightforward. But that's a bit of an ask beyond most professional installers these days. So relatively difficult to engineer. Really good quality, but expensive. So just while that we are still, on that sort of the wider end of the scale, 32 by 9,
some of you will have heard me riffing on about this already, so I'm just going to warning a quick reprise here. This is my personal view. I'm not reflecting Microsoft. This is very much my personal view, but my very, very strong opinion is that twin displays are definitely not to be used for front row. Not only is there no option for a central content window, there are all sorts of viewing angle issues as well, but I'll take that offline if anybody wants to have the conversation. Like I say, I'm going through these slides quickly, so I'm being respectful of people's time. I will definitely finish the main content of this by past. I will stick around for a while after if anybody wants to have a debate, ask any questions. But like I say, I want to make sure we have a fairly action-packed 30 minutes and you get the best value from it as possible. Right, so now we get down to it. Around April, May last year, when you get to my age, time adopts a different shape. Microsoft really cracked it. They settled and they firmed down on this 21:9 aspect ratio. And what you see here is a screenshot from this famous Hive video. Matt Hempy and his team there, Sam Albert and other people, they have this incredible space in terms of what they do, the Hive, which is part of one of their campus buildings in Seattle. And you see here what they've settled on: projection. They've got a projector sat on the floor. There's a bar there, which is holding, in this case, a Jabra Panacast camera bar here, speaker bar on it, and that is the basis of it. Now this is now a fairly stable, well, this is absolutely a stable scenario now, and so now I'm going to look at that in a bit more detail. The thing to know about front row is that it's a screen layout, and it's a layout, and what we've seen there is that there have been some tweaks to that as over this last year. There's going to be more user choices. However, the basic principles of it is that particularly in the Teams a hybrid environment, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of content that you've got to get onto the real estate, namely the screen. So what we have here is that we've got obviously the main content window. Now we're back to picture-in-picture here, and I'm going to come back and look at that actually on the next slide, because that has a big impact on making a choice about the display. Then you've got these status and chat windows at the side. I suspect those will kind of morph or have different options for people as they go through. But really important is that these remote participants are presented at this lower level. They're as close to life size as possible. The thing is raised so they're as close, so the eye height, you get close to eye contact as possible. And another thing to say about 21:9, it's actually pretty close to the old cinema scope a cinema format, which is a validated format with a standard. I think there's a SMPTE standard involved with that. But just to come back to that content window, so the content window is really important. So that's where the meat of the meeting is going to be. Bit of alliteration there, and whether it's a spreadsheet or some detailed document. And so with Discuss, we've been used to thinking in terms of the display effectively being the same word as the content, whereas now where we've got this content window, we have to think about the content window. So what we have to do now is to apply Discuss to the content window height, and not the overall image or display height. So using that example there, if we were using the discuss default percentage element height of 3%, which is the 6:1 rule, and if, as in this example, the content window represents 60% of the image height, if you apply 60% factor to 6:1, that becomes a 3.6:1 farthest viewing metric, or the metric to determine image size. So you can really see why we've made now a real step change. The tide has really turned, that we're moving to much larger display sizes, and it doesn't just apply to front row. The whole thing about having effective hybrid spaces and teaching spaces, it's really about getting the image right. So using Discuss is something that you can use, very easy to use it critically. There are a number of calculators on my website that you can download. I've done webinars on it. When you get the link to this, you can go to my website and you can see all of the old webinars are available on demand. So there's plenty there, and always happy to talk to people about that. Another a factor to why this whole thing is really bang up to date is towards the end of last year, the support for the Cisco Telepresence rooms, the IV1 5000s, that they went end of life. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of end users, a lot of integrators, a lot of consultants really having to now they're getting off the fence, and they are what they're doing by and large is they're keeping the Cisco rooms, because there's a lot of really great things about those Cisco rooms: the lighting, the background color, the layout, really very carefully designed, for their day, really outstanding. So what they're doing, what a lot of clients are doing, are swapping those out for front row displays, that represents a massive opportunity. And I think in terms of front row rolling out, we're seeing that as being a big thing. Just a couple of slides then about practical things. Some people even now are not sure whether they're going to want front row or a full 16:9 image, and so really that's no problem, because the point is, if you just go for the largest image that's possible, you can still have 21:9, and you can have it as a kind of a content strip within the overall window. And depending on the projector you use, Microsoft, on their bill of materials for so that room at the Hive was originally called the enhanced meeting room, and in true Microsoft style, that got morphed into now the signature meeting rooms. On the bill of materials at the moment is the Epson EBPU range. And one of the things about that is that it's got an EDID, a 21:9 EDID, so it can tell the compute that it's a 21:9 device, but also you've got the option of where you position it on the screen. And on the principle that you go go for the largest image size possible, here's some sort of basic calculations about what's typically feasible in a standard size rooms, but this is just a kind of a general principles. Don't take this as absolute gospel, although if you do use this, you won't go wrong. So standard room height is 2.7 meters, or 9 feet in old money, and I believe that's the same in the States as it is in Europe. So fairly consistent, plus or minus, across global estates. And looking at that, then a 21:9 screen, you can have sort of 3.5 to 4 meters wide, which is approximately 148-inch diagonal in 21:9. And looking at the 16:9 option, and again, having it with the option to use 16:9 or 21:9, then typically that's 120-inch diagonal. So hopefully that's helpful. Now, the point about the flat layout and just looking into the future is that our designers think about this. We feel very strongly that to make this whole experience to be more involving and more organic and feel more natural, that there'll be a move to curved screens. And we have got designs for that. I mean, we make curved screens and we make immersive screens, so we've got a background in that. And we were hoping to have something to show at ISC, but unfortunately won't. But watch this space, because that's something that we're working on, and I think that will be a real value add in the future. So. Thinking about the implications for this, what we're seeing now is a move to radically larger display sizes. Microsoft have backed projection firmly for obvious reasons, but if we do projection, it's got to be done properly. And that means the use of proper ambient light rejecting screen materials. Ambient light screen materials are absolutely essential. And what you need is a screen that's black until projected light hits it. So it's all about black levels. You know, a word from our sponsor here, I'm not, you know, the only material that we know and that we actually have we have it ourselves, but anyway, the only material that really will do this is the DNP Supernova, because it's a genuinely optical front projection ambient light rejecting screens. In other news, we are very proud to have co-designed with Epson an exciting new exhibit involving Front Row, and come and see us at their booth 3J100, and please do book a slot to meet me there. A word from our sponsor. You know, we provide a wide variety of services and products. Commercially, they go through the reseller channel, but as a number of you know, got very close relationship with end users, with campuses, with consultants and so forth. And also there's my consultancy as well. So I'm going to wrap up there, because, you know, we're on the half hour. On the slide deck that I've put together for today, there's a bunch of other slides with support and reference materials. You can download some guides for displays and an actual front row room design. But as we get to the half-hour point, I'd just like to thank everyone for being here on the webinar today. Thank you very much for the people who picked up on my audio quality. Hopefully that got put right and has been good enough for you now. I'm going to stick around to see if there are any questions. Some of these sessions generate loads of questions and debate, and others don't. But judging by the very big number of registrations today, that's a hot topic. I really hope that has helped you. Anybody who's got any questions that can't be dealt with here, just ping me, LinkedIn, email. My details are there, very easy to find. Please look out for the next tranche of webinars, which we'll be publishing in the next couple of weeks, and you can also refer back to other ones there. So thanks so much, and I hope to see you on the next webinar. Okay, let's have a little look at the Q&A. Okay, so Ehab asks, I think that ElementHeight shall be the smallest recognized part in a letter or a symbol, since there may be some details in symbol or letter not considered if not doing that. Yeah, Ehab, you're right. And I think the thing is that the point about DISCAS is you use the standard critically. And that is to say that you use it as best suits your client. It's not a rule book saying you use it like this or you don't use it. There are some really useful guidelines in there, but in the end, the point about standards is that they are, and using them, is they've got to be respectful of the people who are doing the work, you know, namely yourself. So Excuse me. So that example, that PowerPoint slide that those slides I showed you, that's an example of that. But if you have special characters, then what you need to do is to do the version of that, and then work with the clients, sit with them at the back of the room, and then go through to actually make sure what is properly legible, what people can see and engage with at the back of the room. I hope that helps. It's quite a complex point, that, and like anything else, be very glad to take that offline if you want. Okay, so apart from that, what I've got is some very nice comments from everyone. Thank you, Vincent. Thanks, Hal, Paolo. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Claire. Bruce, the manufacturer of that camera stand is Heckler. We can supply that at Visual Displays, but it's actually brought in by Midwich, as we're being honest. But we also make them ourselves, because there's a bit of adjustability that's actually required from job to job about camera height and position. So so we make those. I hope that that helps. Daniel, I've got some great questions today. Thank you. What commitment has Microsoft given to maintaining the front row standard so that we can reassure our clients that a bold change in room and display center design is worthwhile? That's a really fundamental point, Daniel. I think the trouble is that in the end, there are no certainties in life. But I think, based on my conversations with my colleagues within Microsoft, and also just to do with momentum that's building up, I think it really unlikely that anything is going to change there. If anything, I think it's just a question of when the other platforms, will move out to that. No guarantees, but I feel, at the risk of making a complete fool of myself again, I feel very confident that this will be a consistent platform. Mark asks, where did you get the 60% display height for the content window for Front Row? Is this standard? So Mark, what I did was I just got hold of a Front Row layout, and I just got the tape measure out. I just measured it. After I did that, and I was talking with Microsoft, then the variations began to appear. So I've seen it. I haven't seen it. I've heard it being 70%. Honestly, my prediction is that will be variable, where there'll be a trade-off between the size of the content window and then the size of the video images of the remote participants below, and also that can be dynamic, because there'll be times during a meeting when everyone's looking at the content rather than engaging with each other. So you'd want to be able to move between modes. There's a whole lot of learning about the use cases and the workflows in hybrid. And I think that Microsoft are tracking that. There are, if you look at the news, all sorts of updates and so forth each month, and there are some fantastic people out there like Tom Arbuthnot and Jimmy Vaughan, and Graham, the guy from Neat, doing really useful things, putting out information about that. But you have got to plug yourself into it. So 60%, I think, honestly, will be at the smallest end comparatively of what it will be, but the principle of this picture-in-picture thing and applying it to your room design is important. The thing to remember is that it's not as if you say, it's got to be 3.6 to 1 for the farthest viewer. If you go to 3.8 to 1, people won't be able to see it. It doesn't work like that. It's not like a dividing line. But the thing is that you've got to draw a line somewhere, a defining line somewhere. But the point is you do have latitude there, so you don't have to be too pedantic and strict about it. Mr. English, John English, when considering element height for Front Row, should you not be looking at the text in the side pod chat rather than the content? Well, that's a good point, John. But I think in practice, if you were going to optimize the chat, then that would put the whole thing out of kilter. I think that, I think in practice it's going to be about resizing the chat box rather than vice versa. This is the part which I think is dynamic and changing, and it's kind of watch this space. And from my point of view, it's very much a spectator sport, because my thing is the displays, the optics, the lighting, particularly the visible part of it. I do my best to track the changes on the actual layouts and so forth, but I just take it as granted that change, whatever life is like now, things will change, and it's a question of how you adapt to it. But I think that chat window, the way I see it is that the main content window is a must-have, and the chat window is a nice-to-have. And it's okay if you kind of have to screw up your eyes to read that in the seeing what somebody said in the corner. But the really important thing is that you can see, read, and engage with the content in the main content window. Vincent, what did the guideline mention on video instead of elements? Honestly, Vincent, there isn't much to do with just video. It's really based around being able to see content. It's sort of like a professional thing. You just have to take an informed on that. There are, that you look at various cinema standards, which goes that the people who self-select in a cinema, the position will be 1.5 times the width of the screen. But there are practical issues that usually override that. So I'm sorry, I can't say anything definitive about that. Ibrahim, thank you for that lovely comment. And Bruce, thank you. Vincent asks, a video instead of slides. Well, again, just coming back to that, Vincent, it depends on how complex the video is. If you're showing, like a shot of an advertising reel, it doesn't matter. Maybe if you are doing looking at a detailed layout for a new building or somewhere, then that needs to be the case. However, I think that there will be times when you're just going to have to fill a much larger part of the screen than before. But I think that's a developing picture. But it's actually really interesting that you guys are focusing on this, because that is very much a dialogue that I hear about. Daniel, that's a really nice, kind comment. Thank you for that. Okay, so Vincent's saying that's a question based on connected classroom setup. Okay, Vincent, you've got my details. Shall we take that offline if possible? I think that's a bit of that's something I'd like to talk about, and hybrid is very interesting to me, but if we could do that. So Tom asks a question, curved ambient light rejecting screens. Yes, we can curve them. That's one of the issues, is that a DNP has some limited ability to curve that, and we're working through that, seeing where the end stops are. But I have a technology partner, Matt Roberts from Portal Devices. We work in lockstep together, our two companies, and we're looking at how we can take the material and maybe stretch the envelope a little bit further. But yeah, curved ALR is very much possible. But that's what we do. We work with these advanced materials, and we use advanced calculation tools and visualization tools in order to do that. And we've got actually Matt and I've got a call about this tomorrow, a product call to that. So it is very much in the current tense, and I think that in the present tense. And I think that we're much so out of the gate there than we wanted to be. But watch this space over the next couple of months. You're going to see something to do with curved screens. Okay. Well, look, we've had a fantastic bunch of questions. I really appreciate that. I just love it when I get this feedback. really makes it worthwhile. You know, I do this for free. I do it for the love of it. I've been a big evangelist for standards, but also do it just to show that you know, visual displays and my consultancy, we've got this ability and we work with people to support them. But you know, consultancy is a funny word. Often it's just advice, and if you see me at ISE, which I'm really looking forward to, then if you buy me a coffee or buy me a beer, even better, then I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Okay, so I'm going to sign off now. Been a really great session today. Thanks very much. We've got another sort of 12 minutes past the deadline, but do look out for the follow-up slides you'll get and the recording, and also look out for the dates for the next webinars, which I'll start to post on LinkedIn and so forth as soon as I can. So thanks so much, and I hope to see you on a webinar again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.